this Talk Myself to Sleep Stoic series. In this series, written and produced by Stephanie Poppins, the female Stoic, we learn all about female authors from the past who have celebrated Stoicism in their work. But before we begin, it is time to relax and fully let go. Take a deep breath in through your nose and let it out on a long sigh. That's it. Feel your shoulders melt away from your ears. Feel the pressure seep away from your cheeks as you relax into the support beneath you. There is nothing you need to be doing now, and nowhere you need to go. Today's episode looks at the Stoic virtues of self-control and fortitude in the works of Charlotte and Anne Bronte and George Eliot. During the Victorian era, there was a remarkable convergence of classical philosophy and modern literary sensibility. Nowhere more evident than in the works of Charlotte, Anne Bronte and George Eliot. These authors, writing during a period of social upheaval and intellectual ferment, drew upon the ancient wisdom of Stoic philosophy to create characters who embodied principles of rational self-governance, moral duty, and resilient endurance. Through novels such as Jane Eyre, The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and Middlemarch, these writers transformed Stoic precepts into compelling narratives of human struggle and moral development. Stoicism was founded in ancient Athens by Zeno around 300 BCE. It emphasized the development of self-control and fortitude as a means to overcome destructive emotions. The idea was virtue is the only good, and that external circumstances cannot ultimately harm the soul if we practice the dichotomy of control, which distinguishes between what is within and what is without our power. These ideas found fertile ground in the Victorian consciousness, which grappled with questions of moral responsibility, social duty, and individual individual agency in an increasingly complex world. Both the Brontes and George Eliot were educated women familiar with classical texts and contemporary philosophical discourse, largely available because Elizabeth Carter translated the works of Epictetus in 1758. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre presents perhaps the most compelling example of Stoic philosophy embodied in a Victorian protagonist. The character of Jane serves as a masterful illustration of Stoic principles in action, demonstrating how ancient wisdom could address modern challenges of class, gender, and moral integrity. From her childhood at Gateshead, through her trials at Lowood School, Jane develops a stoic resilience that becomes her defining characteristic. When her cousin John Reed torments her, Jane's response reveals an intuitive understanding of the Stoic principle that others cannot truly harm one's essential self. Her famous declaration to her aunt, "I am not deceitful. If I were, I should say I loved you, but I declare I do not," demonstrates the Stoic commitment to truthfulness regardless of external consequences. At Lowood School, under the influence of Helen Burns, Jane encounters more explicit Stoic teaching. Helen's patient endurance of injustice and her philosophical acceptance of suffering echo the Stoic belief that external circumstances cannot diminish one's inner worth. Helen tells Jane, "Life appears to me too short to be spent in nursing animosity or registering wrongs." This articulates the Stoic principle that resentment is a self-imposed slavery and is more harmful than any external injury. As Jane moves to Thornfield, her relationship with Mr. Rochester provides the novel's most significant test of Stoic principles. When she discovers Rochester's existing marriage to Bertha Mason, Jane faces a conflict between passionate desire and moral duty. Her decision to leave Thornfield exemplifies the Stoic teaching that virtue must triumph over inclination. "I care for myself," she declares. "The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself." This statement perfectly encapsulates the Stoic belief in the supremacy of moral self-governance over external circumstances or emotional impulse. Even in her poverty and isolation at Moor House, Jane maintains her Stoic equilibrium, neither despairing over her losses nor compromising her principles for security. Her rejection of St. John River's proposal demonstrates another Stoic principle: the importance of acting according to one's true nature rather than external expectations. Jane recognizes that marriage without love would violate her authentic self, and this demonstrates the Stoic understanding that true virtue requires alignment between one's actions and one's essential character. When we look at Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, we can see Stoic philosophy through the character of Helen Graham, whose journey from naive young woman to morally resolute widow illustrates the Stoic process of developing virtue through adversity. Helen's story demonstrates how Stoic principles can guide individuals through the most challenging circumstances, while still maintaining moral integrity. Helen's marriage to Arthur Huntingdon begins with romantic illusion, but it evolves into a Stoic confrontation with reality. As Arthur descends into alcoholism and debauchery, Helen faces the Stoic choice between accepting what she cannot change and taking responsibility for what lies within her control. Her decision to remain with Arthur initially reflects the Stoic principle of accepting one's fate. But as his behaviour threatens their son's moral development, she begins to realise her higher duty lies in protecting the child. Helen then departs secretly from Grassdale Manor, and she chooses virtue over social convention and personal comfort. Her willingness to endure social ostracism, economic hardship, and legal vulnerability demonstrates the Stoic teaching that external goods are less important than moral integrity. When she tells Gilbert Markham about her past, she explains her actions in terms that echo Stoic philosophy. "I would not have my son to be like his father," she says. "I would have him to be a better man." Throughout her trials, Helen maintains the Stoic virtue of self-discipline, neither indulging in self-pity nor seeking revenge against those who wrong her. Her careful cultivation of independence through her art reflects the Stoic principle of developing inner resources that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. And even when her husband lies dying, Helen's forgiveness and care demonstrate the Stoic belief that virtue benefits the virtuous person, regardless of whether it is reciprocated. When looking at George Eliot and her novel Middlemarch, we see the most sophisticated integration of Stoic philosophy, a weaving of Stoic themes throughout its complex narrative structure and multiple character arcs. Eliot, whose philosophical education included direct engagement with classical texts, created characters who embodied different aspects of Stoic teaching while exploring the challenges of applying ancient wisdom to modern life. The main character, Dorothea Brooke, begins the novel with idealistic aspirations that gradually mature into a more nuanced understanding of virtue and duty. Her initial marriage to Edward Casaubon reflects a misguided attempt to find meaning through external achievement. But her gradual recognition of Casaubon's limitations and her own mistaken assumptions demonstrate the Stoic process of learning to distinguish between appearance and reality. Dorothea goes on to grow throughout the novel. She decides in the future to marry Will Ladislaw despite social disapproval and financial sacrifice. This, juxtaposed with her previous marriage, shows her development and understanding that true virtue lies in an authentic choice rather than social conformity. Her final state, therefore, described by Eliot as one where the effect of her being on those around her was incalculably diffusive, reflects the Stoic belief that virtue naturally benefits the broader community. Perhaps most significantly, Middlemarch itself embodies the Stoic vision of life as an interconnected web of moral choices and consequences. Eliot's famous observation that the growing good of the world is partly dependent on unhistoric acts reflects the Stoic belief that individual virtue contributes to the cosmic order even when its effects are not immediately visible. These authors' use of Stoic philosophy addressed specific challenges of Victorian society regarding women's roles, social mobility, and moral authority. The Stoic emphasis on inner virtue over external circumstances provided a philosophic framework for characters who face social constraints based on class and gender. For the female characters especially, Stoicism offered a source of dignity and agency that transcended social limitations. Jane Eyre's moral equality with Rochester, Helen Graham's authority over her own life, and Dorothea Brooke's eventual self-determination all reflect the Stoic teaching that virtue knows no social boundaries. Each of these characters achieve a form of freedom through philosophical discipline that their society might have otherwise denied them. And these classic novels suggest that moral transformation begins with individual development and spreads outward through example and influence. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you might be interested in my audiobooks that are available on my website, newworldbooks.uk. Please consider following and leaving a comment and a like to support my journey.